Happy, bright, sunshiny day to everybody. Let's have a quick conversation about really annoying writing habits. I don't mean physical writing habits, but story production habits. It's a symptom of lazy or inexperienced writing. It's a common trap that particularly new authors fall into. And I'm going to break that into kind of two categories of new authors. You've got your basic text and novel writing, and then you've got your newish writers who are breaking into sort of the comic book arena. I don't play in the movies and TV and script writing arena. It's not something I'm good at. I don't want to speak about it. Back into the annoying writing habits. You've seen them, and there's jokes about too much exposition where your author tells you what to think and how annoying that is. Think back to all those times when your parents told you, don't stay out late at night, don't do this, don't do that, don't touch the stove. All those don't do where you're being told what to think and you're not being given an opportunity to learn. Those lengthy explanations that just bore the crap out of you about why you had to put your shoes on and tie your shoes. Those kind of lengthy explanations are vastly less effective than your parents just saying, hey buddy, tie your shoes. And then you don't tie your shoes, you step in your laces, you fall on your face. And then your parents say, did you learn anything? When you're shown something in your life or in writing as an extension of life experience, a preserved oral experience. If you tell somebody at great length what they should think, it's boring and preachy. You're going to come off that way. You're going to sound that. Part of the reason a lot of my early stories got scrapped was because I spent so much time telling what was going on and not showing what was going on. When I have a piece of dialogue that's properly written, and this is very difficult, don't think that this is something you just wake up one day and know how to do. This is your 2 million words into your dead letter file. You've crafted 2 million words of story that's never going to see the light of day because you think it sucks. That's where you wake up to the point of this. If I have a character, for example, who has a mental disorder, at this point in your life, you've probably seen that drugged out dude on the corner who's got his hands in his armpits and he's clocking at the stop sign for whatever reason. That dude who's got his hands in the armpits clocking at the stop sign, I can tell you, man's corner clocking at the stop sign. Or I can deliver that in dialogue as characters walking down the street, having conversation, fellow with hands and armpits starts clocking at them, and the conversation proceeds around the fellow clocking at them and then assaulting them with a pecking motion. I don't have to tell you that dude is mentally ill. I don't have to tell you that dude is whacked out of his mind on some substance, because that interaction of your characters with the guy who's whacked out of his mind is effective in historical fiction, fantasies, modern and future settings. That kind of mental illness example is extreme, but you can write that into your characters. I have a character, she's a female protagonist who has severe anger and severe anxiety issues. How do I write that? So I gave this character one of those retainers that stops you from grinding your teeth. Through the book, she progressively stops using the retainer because her anxiety issues are reducing over time, that interactions of the story. And there's conversations for basically herself talking to herself early on. Then there's story development where she's using, and then at the end, her mother comments how she's not using her retainer because she's on her bed dressing. I'm showing, not telling, that the character is changing and growing, not as extreme as the Chicken Man example. I like comic books and manga, manhwa, whatever the heck they're called now. I like the fantasy adventure stories. I like the art, and I'm looking through a lot of them because I have a few ideas for later. They're not a right now kind of thing. They're a 3-4 years down the road kind of thing where I develop and percolate the ideas and then execute the project later. I'm paying attention to Western comic books and the Eastern comic books. And the Western comic books are not as much fun as they used to be, in my opinion. The Eastern comic books I seem to enjoy more. And one of the common threads in those comic books is while they are showing action in brilliant color, the story itself is skipping to the godly intervention stuff. Basically, your character is a loser. He dies, wakes up and suddenly he has superpowers because the first thing he does is he trips and falls and he discovers some lost hidden vault of the gods and picks up their skills, etc. That's not really much character growth. The character dies. He ends up in a fantasy land or a video game because he's a loser who only plays video games. Suddenly he can hack the system set out for him to hack. That's not proper character growth. If you go to Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, one of my favorites, when you look at the book, Lord of the Rings, Samwise Gamgee is the hero of the whole thing. He carries the ring bearer through the trilogy. Sam has a girl he's afraid to talk to. Not the movies, but the book. After Saruman's tower is destroyed, he takes his little worm tongue guy, and then they go and the two of them invade the Shire. Go through this war against the Dark Lord. They fight orcs. They change the world. They meet kings there with Gandalf. Then march full to find their home subverted by the church they're merciful to, and they had to fight a full another war just to save their home. So Samwise gets to come home and he gets to fight all again. This time, the girl he likes sees him. Sam is the background character that carries the trilogy and Frodo to the end. And then they fight. Sam finally shows his complete character arc where he's grown and developed into the self-actualized character at the end where he takes his destiny into his hands and he steps up. So that's proper character development. And it took hundreds of pages for Sam to get to that point. In these Eastern comic books I've been going through, I like the art stories and ideas. I'm not a big fan of how quickly the characters jumped from I'm a dead loser who's just fallen out of my window because my apartment collapsed or something like that. And then suddenly they wake up or like they overdose on video games and die. And then they wake up in the game they're playing. I can understand the stretch they're trying to make and why that's there. Eastern culture is much more follow the rules. That's a cultural thing, not me being mean. Eastern culture has a much more rigid society and positions in that society. They're writing from an Eastern culture, like Korean, Chinese, Japanese. But the character development is hollow because when your character is 3 pages old and suddenly they've got the god skill to devour everybody's power by touch and consume their life force, and every single life force they consume replicates their own power scale, and they exponentially take off. Everybody else is worth so many points, and our main character is 100 times as many points. Your power creep is such that nothing is a challenge. It becomes uninteresting because the character doesn't have to struggle. That character I was reading last night didn't have anything they were fighting for because they were so powerful, nothing was bothering them. They were soloing group bosses to fun and collecting all the treasured items because they had god material. That doesn't challenge our protagonist, and we don't see a proper character development. It's difficult to remain attached to that character. They're too powerful too quickly, and I haven't become attached to the character before he achieved godlike powers. Something to keep in mind in your writing. Show your characters doing something, dealing with mental illnesses and character traits. Show your characters dealing with things. Don't just be lazy and tell there's a crazy guy in the corner. Because if you go back and try to put yourself into time period, they didn't understand mental illness. That's a relatively new concept. So if you go back to the Middle Ages, oh, he's just the weird guy. They didn't understand mental illness. They just knew somebody was wrong, demon possessed or whatever they would call it. Based upon whatever world you are operating in, you're going to have different responses. If you're writing historical fiction or fantasy, you can't come out and say in a 1300s setting, swords and shields, mental illness, because mental illness didn't really exist until the whole Sigmund Freud thing, which was much more recent. It was modern industrial era. As you're explaining things to your audience, you need to make sure that people understand how pieces and parts connect together, but you can't do it by demanding someone to take your opinion on the subject. The best way is through dialogue with the infinite power creep from Eastern comic books. It's lazy writing. My interest in the characters drops because there's no challenge. It's like I wink at the demon prince, the demon prince's head explodes, and I take his wife. That's not a very compelling story. That kind of infinite godly power, the stakes aren't there. I haven't challenged my character. My character doesn't have to make smart decisions. When your character has to struggle, when the character that we are writing struggles, our readers are going to be more inclined to root for our character. And that's something that I've found very prevalent, particularly in like the Eastern manhwa, the Korean and the Chinese manhwa, because they keep dropping characters into massive power creep situations. There's no challenge. The writers are making inexperienced errors because they're relying on the art. And the art is beautiful, which is why I like looking at the pictures. But the art, the fantasy art, explosions, colors, and the magic powers and stuff like that, those are cool. Where it really runs afoul for me is the infinite power creep so quickly, the infinite unearned power creep. It breaks the immersion because there's no hero's journey to get straight to the point. It's been on my mind about stories. I've run into both an audiobook and a few of these manhwa stories are suffering from these errors. Just something to keep in mind in your writing. Have a wonderful week. Enjoy your day.